Part of that means you have to really have to step back and you have to look at how holistically are you going after your marketplace and your customer? What are the pieces of information that you need and how do you bring them together? But you need to have a way to bring them together. If anybody was doing surveys independent and then you have Eloqua independent and let's say you're doing something else independent, it's really not going to be very effective because you're all over the board.
Got it.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I like about survey analytics because of the tie into some of the technologies like Salesforce.
So tell us a little bit about Ashworth College.
Sure. We're a online degreed accredited college in the United States and Canada, and actually also the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. We have about 50,000 students each year, and our programs consist of high school, career programs, and degree programs like associates, bachelor's, and master degrees.
Mm-hmm. So what's your role here at Ashworth?
I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. I have complete marketing responsibility, all the things that you would typically think as part of marketing. So segmentation, targeting, positioning, product, price, place, promotion, sales channel,
awesome.
All those, and customer satisfaction, if you will. We have a separate customer service or student services organization. But ongoing customer satisfaction, you put that into in terms of the marketing area as well. We use ongoing insight surveys during, let's say, one would call the lead generation to nurturing stage, where we actually have prospective students that are inquiring about our school, and during that phase we're asking them questions and we're capturing that data and that information to help us better direct offers to them, to help us better direct information to them. And then finally there's a part at the end, if you will, where they're actually a student. And one of the big things in all of education is to be able to help a student go from enrolling in an institution to ultimately graduating. If you look at colleges and universities throughout the United States, you'll find that there's a huge amount of dropout during that whole period. And one of the things in terms of surveying is to be able to find out how they're doing, get feedback from them on an ongoing basis, and through that feedback be able to actually help them kind of move through the process. Because ultimately, our mission is to help them graduate and gain an education to better their lives. And if we can identify things along the way they're stumbling, that are stopping them from doing that, then we'll be able to do our mission better. We have, one I think might be of interest to people is that, especially marketing people, we're essentially moving completely to full cloud technology. So Salesforce.com, we have our own dialer systems, scripting programs. Eloqua, we're about to implement Eloqua. Of course, we're going to be implementing with that an upgrade to Question Pro. Of course, we use all kinds of social media types of technologies, Facebook, Twitter. We're in the process of implementing our own enterprise, corporate-wise social media. So you think about companies like Ning, Jive, Reality Digital, etc., people that are in that space. Well, sure, they can play together. The key is ultimately it takes a lot of application know-how. And I'm not just talking the IT application know-how. I'm talking about marketing know-how in terms of how do you extract value out of that. One of the key pieces through all of that, though, is you got to understand and follow a customer along the way. And you want to be able to gather all that information about a customer and use the insight from a customer to really help direct some of those things. So, for example, Eloqua, as an example. Eloqua will be able to help us to identify a customer or an existing student's digital footprint, so as we're moving around our website. Now, as a marketer, you want to use that information, obviously, to be able to better market to those. But another part of digital footprint, and this is where the survey analytics connection comes into as well, is you're going to have different customers going to have different levels of satisfaction. You want to be able to gather that information as well. So just because somebody is going around to your website doesn't mean that that's somebody that you necessarily want to increase your marketing to. If you have one customer who is actually, or prospect, who you had some data where you got some quantifiable data back and forth, you have an engagement with them and they're telling you some information, you can then use that to then actually then change some of your scoring, let's say in Eloqua, and say, okay, because of that other piece of data, now what I'm going to do something differently in terms of a campaign that I might do out to a prospect. Previously, I was Senior Vice President of Marketing for a company called Unisource. We were a turnaround. The company was losing lots of money. And so when you start doing a turnaround, you start to figure out where are you losing money and where do you fix certain things. But what you have to start to find out is, in any business, and you're doing value, are you getting a fair price for the services that you're giving a customer, right? Traditional way people look at is, do you make money or not? Well, that's one way to look at it. But if you ever look at it in terms of value pricing would say, what you want to identify is what does a customer value? And then what you want to identify is how well they think you're delivering on that value. So you start to identify, if you will, the value that they perceive that they receive. And through that, then you can start to look at what your prices are. And are you giving away too much of the value that they perceive? So let's suppose this is the value, and I'm sure I can still, there we go. If this is the value that they perceive, and this is the price that you sell, that's not good. That's not good. But if this is the value perceived, and this is the price you sell, that's not good either. Right. What we were able to do with survey analytics, as simple as this. We went out and every quarter we surveyed our customers. We had about 20,000 customers we surveyed each and every quarter. We surveyed on all kinds of things to try to identify what are the things that they truly valued. Through survey analytics, we identify what they value most. Then we were able to use the algorithm we created through that information, putting it through statistical analysis, and come up with a tool to identify customer A values this, customer B values it at this, customer C values it at. You map what your price is compared to that, and you identify, are you giving away too much? We were able to use that information to implement a pricing increase over 1 year that increased prices on about $1.8 billion of business by roughly 1%. And in the distribution business, that's huge because you don't just give prices across the board by 1%. What you have to do is, this customer values a whole lot and you're only giving it this much. So we can raise prices up higher. Without having any negative effects. Without having negative effects, because what you're still doing is you're giving the customer a good deal. They value this much, this is the price, this is value that they receive. That's a good deal. You also have to identify, we found out, is customers that, for example, one of the questions we would ask is did Unisource offer the best value in our industry? Right? Because that's what we wanted to be. We wanted to be best in our industry. And we defined that. Well, we were able to find out that some customers were highly agreed to that, and to the other degree, other customers highly disagreed. Interesting, the customers highly agreed to that question. We had the highest prices with those customers. We had the lowest amount of loss of customer revenue. Now, here's the thing. The question becomes, what drives that? Mm-hmm. It goes back to these things about different, things that customers value. You have to identify that, because one customer values sales rep responsiveness. Another customer values most product availability. You have to understand these things, because once you do it, then you can do things like pricing. But one other thing I want to mention about in terms of changing also the company's mindset. If I asked 300 people, and I did this a couple of years ago, I asked 300 people. It was our annual 2 years ago, our annual executive conference, and I said, "What's the number one driver of customer satisfaction?" And if you ask the sales people, they would generally say, until that time, they would say that it was product availability, and it was ability to deliver on time, meet our promises. And these are important things, but they were not the number one thing. The number one thing was sales rep responsiveness to customer inquiries. Now, this was really shocking to the group, because what happened is, until that time, sales is over here saying, these people over here aren't doing their job. And these people over here, the operations people, are saying the salespeople are wrong. They got a job to do. This helped us to identify that we all contribute to customer satisfaction, which highly satisfied customers stay and grow your business. And so this really helped us a great deal because it got people focusing on things they hadn't thought about before. And we had real data said, wait a minute, the number one reason why customers leave or stay happens to be sales rep responsiveness to their inquiries. So what happens, we are able to increase the focus. All you got to do is pick up the call, get back to that customer, cool them down if there's an issue. But if you have really good delivery and you don't respond to the customer's call, you're going to tank your business. You want to get to the point of, if we call it mass customization. I want to make an offer specifically to this customer, to this customer, to this customer. Price is one part of that, but also how you deliver, how services that you give, how you speak to them, when you talk to them. All those are part of an offer. If the customer says, I don't want you to call me between X and Y hours, you don't call between X and Y hours.
Right.
Or it's a prospect. If you know some things about them that they're interested in certain things, that allows you to tailor some things, including what the salesperson may speak about. Because if you're a customer, prospect, and there are 4 or 5 things that are important to you, and the salesperson is calling you and is talking about 4 or 5 other things that are not important to you, that's not a good exchange for either party. Customer, prospect doesn't like that. Salesperson doesn't like that. But with the survey data and linking it back to Salesforce, what we'll be able to do is take information like that and use that to serve it up to the salesperson to tell them, these are the things that are important to the customer. So talk about these things. By putting it into one repository like Salesforce, that's perfect, because then what we're able to do is everything ties to Salesforce. Our dialer ties to Salesforce. Our scripting program ties to Salesforce, so we'll be able to have dynamic scripts based on information that's in Salesforce, which is driven by information that comes from customer service.